Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Kristen, one of the good doctors of Abbey Research. We exist to educate about empathy and help everybody get along just a little bit better because Lord knows we need it. This video is part of a series called Welcome to My World, where I get a chance to chat with fascinating people who are different than me, which is everybody, about a thing in their life that we should all know a little bit more about so that we can know each other better and understand and figure out how to live life a little bit less fractured than we currently are. And I am joined today by my friend who I have not seen in so many years. And so it's so exciting to see through a Zoom screen, Rosie McGurran. Rosie is a Belfast-born artist who works in Connemara in the west of Ireland and in Belfast, which for those of you who don't have geography is at the northeast tip-ish. So there's a little bit of a distance there. She grew up in Belfast during the conflict, which she does not directly reflect in her work. And she has worked and exhibited throughout Ireland and internationally. And what is not said in that is that she's also responsible for an arts festival in the town of Roundstone that is one of the most fun gatherings of people I've ever been a part of. And the Innishlacken Project is a really special thing that Rosie is a huge part of making sure happens when it's not COVID times. And it's also happens to be one of my favorite visual artists. So I'm really excited to have her here. Rosie, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure, thank you. Wonderful, great to be able to do it.
So thrilled. So besides all of those facts, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, yeah, I was born in Belfast and I've done lots and lots of things, and I went to school and then went to art college here, but always wanted to kind of run off, understandably. And then I sort of, one of the most important things happened was I was 27, I was awarded a year's scholarship to Rome, where I worked at the British School. So I lived there and had a wonderful studio in a building that was designed by Edwin Lutyens, the architect. And yeah, so that was kind of a game-changing year, and well, I sort of look back on it, it feels like it was last week, and it wasn't, but it was like a sort of a dream-like part of an existence. But I think that gave me a bit of confidence of maybe not living in Belfast, because things were far from resolved, and they still aren't, but this is pre-Good Friday Agreement, so it was like 97, 98. And then I came back, and I then shortly afterwards moved to the west of Ireland, to Connemara, which I'd always sort of longed to live in because of the big blue skies and big stormy skies sometimes. But I think it was just the expansive light and space that really got me. So that was it was a really important time for me to do that. So yeah.
And so why, I mean, Connemara is huge. Why Roundstone? Like, why exactly where you landed?
Because I've been going there for a long time with a friend. I first went there when I was 19 with a friend, and I always went back. But I didn't know anything about the art history of that place. I didn't know it had a massive connection with Belfast. I was aware that an artist called Cecil Maguire painted the harbour and the landscape prolifically, and I would see his paintings in the Ulster Museum, but I didn't know him, and I didn't know anything about Roundstone. Then somebody gave me a book called Three Men on an Island, and that was written about a period of time in 1951 when some Belfast artists actually lived on a little island just off the coast of Roundstone. And the book was written by one of them, James McIntyre, and he wrote it 40 years later. And he, he just brought this whole place to life. And I sort of really loved the book and felt that I wanted to kind of maybe do something and bring artists back to the island. And then I had an opportunity to go and work in Roundstone for a few weeks as part of an arts festival. And the invitation was to go and paint and then exhibit at the end. And I just happened to have a lucky break in Belfast, and I sold loads of paintings at a show. So I decided I would hang around for a while. And then I decided I would look for somewhere to stay. And I secured an apartment in September 2000, and I just went home, packed up my bags, bought a little car, and that was me, trying to find out what the winter would be like in a tiny village. So 20 years later, still there. So there you go.
Still trying to figure out what the winter is like in a tiny village, since Irish weather changes every 7 seconds, I'm sure. So
yeah.
And for routine Abbey research viewers, you should know that that little island off the coast of Roundstone is actually a really huge part of Dr. Erin's heritage and her family lineage. And Roundstone is a huge part of her family lineage. And so maybe someday we'll talk about where our various people come from on videos. But when we've talked about Erin's Irish heritage, it is largely connected to Roundstone. So just a little bit of piece there. So you say in the intro that you gave us that you don't reflect the conflict in your work. Was that a conscious decision?
I don't know if I think at the beginning it was a subconscious decision, because when we went to art college in Belfast in the 90s, it was like a zone that was kind of didn't have that sort of sectarian thing going on in it, you know, and you would expect it to be really, really edgy art coming out of there and people making stuff about, and people were to a point, but that you got the impression the minute you walked in the door that the whole thing of where you came from, who you were and what religion you were just didn't matter, and nobody was interested. So it was like an oasis in the centre of Belfast. My work has always sort of come from a very strong feminist perspective and an autobiographical one. However, I think it was in the development of the work into later years that I realised that what I do is to kind of create figures and places that maybe exist or don't exist, or the figures exist in a kind of maybe a place that I know or something. But for me, the crux of what I've been doing for 20 years, in a sense, was my reaction to the conflict was to create my own world, you know, to create this not a utopia, but a different place that I could exist in my imagination, because the actual stress of living it, that you only realize when you're not there, is absolutely horrendous.
I mean, of course it is. And that's something that I will never fully understand, no matter how much time I spend in Belfast and listen to you all talking. And also the lived experience of living in Northern Ireland is very different based on where you were physically too. Cause like my husband's is a little younger than you, but grew up in much more rural circumstances. So how he carries that history is totally different. Than somebody who lived in Belfast or Derry.
And I think if you live in South Belfast, how you carry that history is going to be really different from somebody who lives in Ballymurphy in West Belfast or in the Shankill Road or in East Belfast or whatever, and on your, you know, your social circumstances and whatever. So, you know, but I'd say 99% of people were affected by it directly in some way or the other. Very few people escaped it. You know, it's just there.
Yeah, it was continuous, because it wasn't, you never knew when the next armed thing was going to happen, but the not armed stuff was happening all the time. And I mean, it still is. I mean, it's still, as we record this, there's still sectarian flare-ups that are always about more than what they seem on the surface.
And it depends. It's really amazing when you read the different papers around the world online, you know, because we have that wonderful thing now that we can do that, the different takes on it. And people say, oh, so many nights of violence in Northern Ireland, and you'd really think, oh my God, that sounds like a dreadful place. And I'm sitting here looking at lovely trees, and you know, it's not a bad day outside. I've just been swimming in Belfast Lough this morning, and I'm going back tomorrow. You know, I mean, it's as I said, it depends on where you live. However, as you say, it's the stuff that's not in action, you know, the non-violent action that really takes its toll. The unspoken, and you know, the stuff that we know that we can just glance across somebody and you kind of know, or you know when somebody's measuring you up and all that sort of stuff, and it's really ingrained in all of us.
Yeah, and so to create a world through your art where none of that exists, no one is sized up by their accent or their last name or anything else like that, must have been such an escape. But can you talk me through when you realized that it was that escape, that it was connected in that way?
Yeah, I suppose it was really, I think about 10 years ago. I was doing an exhibition in the Galway Arts Centre, and there was a catalogue written for that, and the curator interviewed me, and it was printed in the catalogue. And that was one of the things that came up through the questions, that I sort of felt that, you know, was to react to the conflict was running away from it, or not running away from it, but creating this other world. And I suppose that was when it dawned on me through that conversation that is what I've been doing all along. So that was really, that has now become part of my dialogue as such, that's, when people ask me and whatever. So yeah, and it's, even with reference to the island work, to the work I do on the island over there, I've done an awful lot of putting people together from the north and the south, and in a sense, that's our peaceful island. That's where there's a coming together there of artists, and particularly two academies, the Royal Hibernian Academy and Royal Ulster Academy, where people see each other in reality and as working people, working as artists and whatever. So I suppose in a way that's another reaction to conflict, is to find an island with nobody in it and try to create a peaceful community on my own.
I love that though. And that's what, I mean, because the island is an entire place out of time. Like there is no running water. You have to get by a boat there. And so you have the ability to, I love though that I still got cell phone reception on it, which made me laugh so hard. My phone rang when I was walking around in Innishlaken and I was like, what is going on? But I love this idea of the way that we react is to create separate spaces. Because there's not, I mean, for everyday citizens, there is not really a way through the conflict without doing that in some fashion. Because these are massive geopolitical things. And I think of COVID, and that so many of us have done that really in a reaction. We've created our own little spaces because we can't do anything else. We don't know what to do. And so we learn how to make sourdough bread, or we go swimming in a lock, because we're just going to create this space that we can control and that we can find peace in. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, it is. There are all those things, and people are doing different. I think the COVID thing of it has taken us all to places in our heads that we never thought we'd go to, and finding stuff to entertain us. I suppose also because we all need to be constantly entertained, because we live with these, like, as my late grandmother used to call it, that television in your hand.
Yeah.
Your phone. And sometimes there's nothing wrong with being still as well, with just no noise, no TV, no book, no nothing, just look or close your eyes and do nothing. And I think the slowdown has been very good, and the thing is as well, here in Northern Ireland, the virus doesn't care what religion you're, or who you voted for. Unfortunately, some people haven't realized that yet, but
yeah, that does appear to be a controversial opinion in some very bizarre ways.
Yeah, and the one thing I never thought I would see would be, I sometimes every so many years do these illustrated lists of things I never thought I would hear, or things that I hadn't heard of 10 years ago.
Yeah.
One of them that's on my list is vaccine nationalism, because, if you'd have turned around and said in 2015, vaccine nationalism is going to be a huge problem, what's that?
What does that mean? Yeah.
What does that mean,
And that's not a phrase we're using over here. So can you explain to our international viewers kind of
well, it's more in terms of the EU, because Britain left the EU just at the new year, and also had developed quite a few vaccines, particularly AstraZeneca through Oxford University. So a lot of AstraZeneca has been rolled out in Britain, and because the EU, there have been various quotas and whatever things. I don't entirely understand it, but a lot of countries in the EU are well behind Britain, and then there have been all sorts of kerfuffles of the vaccine was developed in one place, it was produced in the other, and nobody's going to let that get through. And I don't like what you're doing, and you don't like what I'm doing, and I don't like what you're doing either. And then it just sort of became kind of really quite infantile, of something that could potentially save somebody from dying.
Yeah.
And it was like a kind of vaccine nationalism of, we invented it and you're producing it and give us it, and no, we don't want you to have it, because you had the audacity to leave. And that's a simplified version. It's so stupid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've already said on this channel, I find Brexit largely to be unfathomably why it's a good idea, because it's not in my mind. So it's all kind of stupid. But I think it's a good it's another good example of things beyond a lot of normal people's control, that they are still desperately affected by. So as in the last 10 years, as you've been a little bit more conscious of the thought of how the conflict and your relationship with the conflict, and then being a Northern Irish woman, like what that means from a feminist perspective, also as the role of women in Northern Irish society has continued to evolve. And we know my viewers might not, but those of us who study and lived in Northern Ireland know that the peace agreement would not have happened without the Northern Irish Women's Party.
Yeah.
And then, which was largely then disbanded and ignored, because that's often how history is written. But how has, as you become more conscious, do you see your inspiration coming from different places? Do you create the world a little bit differently, a little bit more intentionally now, since you've been conscious of that connection?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good question, because I think also, you know, in the time that I've lived in Roundstone and that entire experience is kind of, because I left, there's an aspect of living here that is, you know, you can't do, you know.
Okay.
You have to be afraid, and you can't do, and you can't lift yourself out of things, because your being is taken up with the, you know, the subtext, the quiet subtext of the conflict thing going on. So whenever I went to Roundstone, I don't know whether it's to do with age or maturity or confidence or what, a whole pile of things colliding at once. And then I started to travel and work in other countries. And, you know, I had the opportunity to go and work in Australia a couple of times. I've worked in America loads of times. I've done different things like that. And all of those experiences that are hugely dear to me, particularly in lockdown, when you look back on them, have informed my work and have informed the structures and the stories and of what goes on. So everything I do is informed by all of those experiences, which kind of broadens it. It doesn't just localize it to here or to Roundstone as such. So yeah, really, I suppose everything's a reaction to everything that happens. And with me, you know, I just have these very vivid and strong ideas, and a storytelling aspect of it. So that's quite important.
Yeah, I love that, because I was going to bring that up. To me, all of your art is very evocative of telling a story and I love that. I can tell there's a story being told, but I don't know what it is, and so I just have to spend more time with the art and learn the story. And I really appreciate that, especially the work with women in particular, or women-esque beings, women-shaped beings. So is there a general kind of, beyond escape, let's say, is there a general through line, or are all of your pieces a different story?
I suppose some of them are quite deliberate stories, you know. Some of them I would really know what I want to say, and then some of them just evolve out of shapes and colors and lines and whatever. So sometimes other people will present me with answers to them before I come to any conclusions. You know, somebody will see something, say, oh, that makes me think of whatever. I go, oh yeah, that's what it was, you know.
Yeah. Because
I'm a sort of like a visual sponge. We all are. And we're looking at so much stuff, absorbing so many things constantly from the minute we get up in the morning, that all sorts of stuff comes out through your work. So yeah, there's never a deliberate. Sometimes there's a deliberate narrative, but the most of the time it's really quite a fluid narrative of one thing relating to the next. You know, like a diary. Oh. It's your handwriting, but the story isn't always the same.
Yeah, I love that. And then, of course, once it becomes a public entity, how we interact with it is a different ballgame as well. And so we'll imprint our own stories on it versus the ones you were trying to tell, which I'm sure has got to be gratifying sometimes and a pain other times.
Yeah. No, it's fine, because, you know, the minute you release it out there and you put it on the wall somewhere, everybody's going to have a different reaction to it. You've absolutely zero control over that. Even if you painted the most photographically realistic looking painting of something or a person, everyone's going to take something out of that. It's going to make everyone feel differently. So that's the kind of thing I like to the abandon of that into everybody's individuality. You know, that's the gamble you're taking. But then you shouldn't. as long as you're not always going to get a positive reaction. As long as you get a reaction and people, receive the work in some way or the other, and they don't, destroy it or react really terribly negatively to it. But as it's there for debate, it's there for discussion, and it's there for people to enjoy it or not. But that's what you do the minute you hand it over.
I love that this art is there for reaction primarily. That's what it comes down to. We spend a lot of time on this channel talking about all forms of art, visual, dance, theater, kind of all of that. And really what it comes down to is like an experiential reaction and how we interact with it. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and its role has changed. It's really it's a wider discussion in how visual art has changed its message and its role over the years. And that we could be here for weeks talking about that.
For sure. Yeah.
And one of the most healing things here in lockdown has been Grace and Perry's Art Club on Channel 4. I don't know if you can watch Channel 4 over there.
But I've heard, you're not the only person that I've heard say that about that show. So
it is the most humane program I've ever seen, and it's the most caring program. And I swear to God, he's the most wonderful human being. He's a really wonderful man, and he just really cares. He cares. And this isn't slush or anything. He's democratic. He wants people to show their work of all different abilities and ages and styles, and professional or not. And it's entertainment, but it's art is the main driving force of this. And it's a huge communication. And if you get millions of people going, I'm not going anywhere on Friday night because Grayson's on, that's terrific. I think he's just, I just admire him so much as an artist, but also as a human.
Yeah, I love that. One of the greatest gifts that Aaron has given me in our friendship is like the idea of the democratization of art. Because I always felt like art museums weren't for me because I didn't understand what it was. And within the first 6 months of our friendship, we went to Amsterdam and we went to the Rijksmuseum, and she stood me in front of the Night's Watch, and without letting me read anything about it, she just said, what do you see? And so I started saying like what I said, and then she said, what do you feel? And I said, overwhelmed. And she's like, okay, then that's what the art means.
Yeah.
And that was like, I wouldn't have ever, and I grew up in really like I could go to the Met in New York every weekend if I wanted to, proximity wise. But it was always so off limits because of how I had been taught art was supposed to be. And the older I get, and the more I think also visual art has changed, as you said. And there are more people like him and like you and like Aaron who are trained in this stuff that are like, no, we want all of you with us. We want everybody to be part of this in some way, shape, or form. I think it's really, really lovely and connects for me to how Northern Ireland moves forward in the Troubles, post the Troubles, in the frozen conflict, in the whatever we call it now, depending on which academic you're talking to, is this idea that for a long time, solutions were only for some people. Yeah. And as I think the more frustrated that a lot of citizens have gotten with the solutions, the more the grassroots energy is one of the biggest things about Northern Ireland that I miss. It's so much like, well, absolutely nobody in charge is going to take care of this, so I'm going to start a festival, or like, and I'll just find somebody to give me some money because they're not going to take care of it, and so I'm going to do it myself. And there's a beautiful spirit of that in that country. I think really does connect with art in that way, where it's just like we all have stories to tell, and let's figure out ways to tell them and live them together.
Yeah, and I think for such a tiny place that it is, for such a small place that has taken such a physical and psychological beating, we're really punching above our weight culturally and as entrepreneurs and business people. And Belfast, which you've lived in, is a magically beautiful city in a lot of ways. There's that side of it, but there are also, all these like amazing young or not so young people who are just out there doing stuff, and as you say, just making it work. And we do punch above our weight culturally, particularly with poets. We've a lot of writers and poets, but we've a huge film industry here at the moment as well, and so much going on, even online, and even recently there was an exhibition in alleyways in South and East Belfast. That's
my favorite.
Yeah, that you could just walk down the alleyway and see artwork made by artists, and it's fantastic.
I love it. When I was living there, the first Friday of every month, all the galleries in Belfast were open at like later than normal.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had a truly disastrous date doing that one night, but but it was I absolutely love just walking around and getting the chance to see what art, and there's lots of cultural festivals in Philadelphia, but I never kind of grew up going to them. Whereas because Northern Ireland is so small, like everybody I knew was going to the Cathedral Quarter Arts Fest. So we all went, and you kind of get a chance to get caught up in things that maybe aren't your cup of tea, but then you get to learn that they are, in a way that you don't get to do over here in the States anyway.
Yeah, but that's the smallness of Belfast is actually quite nice in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's very comforting. It is. It's that is the dichotomy of Belfast. It terrifies and comforts at the same time.
Yeah.
It does a lot of things at the same time that you couldn't imagine. But working in any other context or platform, but it does do all these different things. But I think the majority of it is very, very positive.
For sure. And there's lots of people who would love to clutch their pearls and tell us all the terrible things that are happening, including the newspapers right now and the BBC. And there's lots of all of that kind of stuff. But the most fascinating thing is the people who make it work amidst that. Like all of those things are true at once. Like there are neighborhoods in Belfast that are so under-resourced that people feel they have no other answer but violence. And there are places in Belfast that have so many resources that they get to, take incredible holidays and bring back lots of other culture, and that influences everything. And that's all of that is true, kind of all at once. And that to me is one of the lessons that Northern Ireland can teach the rest of us, is that a lot of things can be true at the same time, and it doesn't make any of them false.
Yeah. So actually there's even an analogy there with my work, and that there could be about 500 different things going on in the one painting, maybe not even related to each other, except we're all on the one stage. And I like to think of things like being on stages, like you're putting performers together, or, even your life or how you present yourself, or creating a painting, it's like putting together an ensemble cast as such, so.
I love that.
It's great fun. It is great fun. And a lot of these, the people in the work just arrive, they just turn up.
I love it. I'm a writer of short stories, and I feel the same way. I'll be typing and I'm like, oh, hello, you. So
yeah. It's like my television watching, which has gone through the roof in the past year.
Well,
I sit now with a sketchbook and a whole pile of like these colored pens, and just doodle at ridiculous levels and go through lots and lots of paper. And then I look at them and think all the things I've done are all rubbish. But then I put them away and then hang them up on the wall and go, oh, that's quite useful. I like that. And just that sort of opening the door to ideas.
I love it. And before I could chase you down 19 more rabbit holes at that statement, because I love the idea of time and art and creation, but I'm mindful of your time, and I don't want to take more of it. So get you back to those doodles. Before we sign off for now, we'll definitely have you back to talk about art at another time, and maybe get Aaron on the call as well, and we'll have that conversation. But is there anything else that you'd like to say about, I guess, being a Northern Irish artist at this juncture in time, before we sign off?
Yeah, oh gosh. I suppose about being a Northern Irish artist, I think, just as a person from Northern Ireland, if anyone has the key to time travel or longevity, I'd like to come back in 100 years' time just to see how it all panned out, because I think it'd be awful good crack to see what happens, but I don't know whether it'll be in my lifetime, But yeah, as being an artist in this is a very positive place to be an artist right now. I think we really have good stuff going on, and we've got great places. And let's hope that when we do emerge from the lockdown, we won't emerge from the pandemic for a long time, but when we emerge from lockdown and learn to live with this, that our institutions and galleries and theatres and museums will still be able to operate, and be funded really well, and that people will go to them. And because it really is, it's so good for you. It really is so good for people.
It really, really is. Well, Rosie McGurran, thank you so much for joining us. All of the ways to find Rosie on the internet will be in the show notes below. But like I said, we will also be harassing her to come back and join us again.
Anytime.
So Rosie, again, thank you so much. And everybody else, we will see you on the next edition of Welcome to My World.